Well, hello and good morning, evening or afternoon, depending on when you are streaming this, the latest episode of Edie's Susty Talk. If you're unfamiliar with the series, it is a series of video interviews that myself and the rest of the editorial team launched back last year during UK's first lockdown to keep us all feeling a bit connected to the sustainability conversation in the place of the in-person conferences that we're all so used to. And in the run-up to our countdown to COP26 event on Thursday, May 20th, I'm taking the time to interview some of our high-level speakers who will be appearing on our panels there. And I'm delighted to have Sandra Roling, the Head of Transport for the Climate Group, on the line today. So a very warm welcome to you, Sandra. How are you?
Very well, Sarah. Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here.
And we're super pleased to have you. So I think it would be worth, I know that most people watching are probably familiar with the Climate Group, they're EDie award winners, they're in our headlines all the time, but I think it would be good to just recap on what's been going on with some of the transport initiatives in the past year or so since we would have spoke. Specifically, the most famous one is probably EV100. So we covered the annual report, but for the benefit of everyone listening, it'd be great to hear about some of the trends from those corporate members in the EV100 during COVID-19. Really, so are there new members? Are there new challenges? Are there new opportunities?
Yes, I think one of the biggest trends, if you will, is that the trend has continued, and that's been surprising in the sense that, as you've already said, with COVID, it's been a very unusual year for everyone, a very difficult year as well. So we weren't sure at the beginning of the year how things were going to go. But what's been really exciting, including to see from the last report, was that the commitment to electromobility from the companies that we work with has really continued. So the campaign itself has grown its membership by about 80%. We're now at over 100 members and over 5 million vehicles that are part of the commitments. But also, and that's, I think, the most important bit for us, the actual action on the ground. So the vehicles that are already electric and on the roads at this moment has also more than doubled. So we have 169,000 vehicles on the roads today around the world. And I think that's ultimately obviously what counts. And I think it shows that companies, despite everything else that's going on, do realize that climate remains a really strong priority, and that electromobility within that is also one of the really, really important solutions that we need to continue to take forward.
Yeah, I was really interested in that report, as you mentioned. So 169,000 EVs on the road, more than half of them having hit the road in 2020, and also that looked at charging point locations as well, right? So that also looked fairly strong last year.
Yes, exactly. Those have almost doubled as well. So 6,500 locations that are now committed to have EV charging by the end of 2030. And that's, of course, a huge amplification benefit as well, because it means that staff can use electric vehicles more easily, that customers can use electric vehicles and just charge up when they're already making a stop at a supermarket or things like that. So it's obviously a big contribution to making electric vehicles more ubiquitous as well.
Fantastic. And obviously EV100 is for these end user businesses. So just a few names are Unilever, Sky, IKEA, BT, Coca-Cola European Partners, Swiss and Austrian Post. So all these big fleet operators. But then also recently, I know that the Climate Group has launched Route Zero, which is slightly different, also encompassing things like cities and businesses that operate some of these really heavy vehicles. So I'd love to hear a bit more about the decision to develop and launch that.
So Route Zero is a joint ambition platform that we have launched in together with the high-level climate action champions and the Road to Zero campaign. And it's focused on the period in the run-up to the international climate negotiations this year, COP26, which is a really, really important milestone on the international climate agenda. And the British government, which has the presidency for this COP, has already put clean transport down as one of their priorities within that. So I think as around the world, governments are thinking about how they can up their climate ambitions, clean transport is one of the areas where there's still a huge opportunity that hasn't fully been captured yet, and probably one of the easier ways to reduce emissions even further. And so as national governments are thinking about their ambitions, we wanted to bring together all the leadership from what is in UN terms called the so-called non-state actors. So businesses, cities, states, investors, private individuals, all the different stakeholders who can make a contribution to addressing climate change as well. So this Road Zero platform brings together the leadership from all these stakeholders. So it's not just ourselves, it's more than 10 partners that are coming together as well. So the World Economic Forum, the Transport Decarbonization Alliance, C40, CalSTART, and a range of others. So EV100 in a way is part of that. It represents the commitments from the business community, but we're then able to also bring in the commitments from the cities, from state governments, etc. And that's all about raising ambition for what's already happening on electromobility, how much momentum there is, building more leadership, and very importantly, connecting it as well, because ultimately transport is a systems challenge. So we need all the different pieces of the puzzle to work together. And that's really the way that we're going to get to more speed.
Fantastic. And I mean, that only launched in April, but the names you dropped there are really big. So I'd love to hear about like what has the reaction been like and the support been like so far on that?
Yeah, I think the reaction has been great. And I think you see by the group of partners that we've been able to bring together that this is really something that people feel the time has come for. Lots of individual organizations have done some really great leadership work. But if we connect it, we can really see how much it's adding up to, and we can also see how we can work together. So to just give one example, policy frameworks obviously affect what businesses can do. Leadership from business, on the other hand, also gives confidence to policymakers that more ambition is possible, that there's already a market to be developed, etc. So that's what we're trying to achieve. And I think now that the platform is launched, it's obviously about bringing all the different stakeholders in. So we want to tell any company, any city, any state, any investor that's interested in being involved in the leadership in the run-up to COP to very easily understand where's the initiative for me, what is the leadership commitment that I can contribute to, how can I become part of this as we're moving towards November.
Got it. And you mentioned there's something that I wanted to come on to, so that the UK COP presidency unit has selected clean transport as one of the central themes for this year's COP. And I think that that's part of the discussion you'll be taking part in at our event. And you mentioned about these policy and business interactions and loops, and obviously we can see some top level commitments from the UK government. So the adoption of the 6th carbon budget, the 2030 ban on new petrol and diesel car sales. But do you think it's really taking into account the need to support the business EV transition?
I think it is. And we last year launched something called the UK Electric Fleet Coalition, which brought together 29 companies with strong bases and strong fleets in the UK in particular to be part of the conversation. So we feel we've been able to make a contribution towards the decision to have an ICE phase-out target by 2030, which was obviously a great win for ambition on electromobility. Of course, now we recognize that the detail is in the fine print when working out the policy frameworks that are required or the measures to actually turn that into reality. So that's a group that we continue to work with, and we're just working on the next position paper that is sort of articulating what is now needed to help business achieve their targets in terms of electromobility, and by doing so then also move the UK as a whole towards the 2030 ICE phase-out target. So I think it's an ongoing dialogue, but we've already been very active in that. We've gotten some good resonance as well. I think we're looking forward to continuing that and being able especially to feedback the real life experiences of companies, because quite often, obviously, as you go along, as you learn, as you implement, you come across things that present barriers or solutions that maybe weren't as obvious before. So I think that's also where we can play a role in just feeding all these experiences back to policymakers and to other decision makers.
Yeah, I have that EV100 2020 status report open here, and some of the things that are raised are, can car makers make a different range of vehicles? We have really specific needs and not enough models to meet them, and then just more investment in charging infrastructure. So I imagine that those are some of the things that you can relay in that dialogue.
Yes, exactly. I think there's the bit about sort of the availability for vehicles, for example, I think is a really important one, because quite often you have the discussion about how much can the manufacturers invest, does the market need to build first? So we feel that the EV100 report, for example, demonstrate that there is already a strong demand, but that we need to build the supply further, that we need to diversify the supply as well. As you say, quite often it's about the exact payload a company needs or the exact dimensions of vehicles that their sort of docking stations have been created for and things like that. And those are obviously very important messages to give to automotive companies, but also to policymakers. And that's why we think things like an ICE phase-out target, for example, as the UK has now adopted, is really important to give that signal of direction and create that additional supply as well that companies need to achieve their targets.
Of course, and then beyond that target, I think the thing that a lot of people are waiting for is this net zero roadmap, and there's going to be a transport roadmap specifically, was due late last year, but another COVID delay victim, sadly. So I'd love to hear whether you've heard any more about that and what you'd really like to see included.
Yeah, so this is something that we're working on right now with the UK Electric Fleet Coalition. There's a new position that we're bringing together. It looks at all the different building blocks, especially at, how do we increase the supply? How can we support the demand? And I think also the charging infrastructure is, of course, very important. How do we ensure that it gets built out in a way that, can really cover the whole country and all the different needs of vehicle users? So much for now, but there will be a position paper with a lot more detail on that that we'll be putting out in public soon.
Great. Well, I'll keep my eyes peeled for that one. But for today, Sandra, I think that's all the time that we have. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, and looking forward to the discussion next week as well.
Yes, of course. So if you've enjoyed listening to this with Sandra today and you want to learn more about clean transport and what that means for businesses at COP26, please join our Countdown to COP26 event on Thursday, the 20th of May. It's an all-day virtual event with panel discussions, Q&As and a keynote as well, who is Sir Roger Gifford, the Green Finance Institute's chair. Aside from Green Finance Institute and the Climate Group, we've got organisations including Natural England, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and of course the COP unit itself. So a really high level and in-depth day of discussions, and I hope to see as many of you there virtually as possible. Once again, that's Thursday, May 20th, and you can find the full agenda and registration at edie.net by clicking events. So thank you so much for your time. I hope to see you there, but for now it's a goodbye from Sandra and a goodbye from myself.